I want to thank you for joining us as we kick off a new series on the prophet Jonah. I'm calling the series Jonah. Let's learn a lesson from one who probably didn't. Anyway, Jonah is just a unique prophet in the Bible. In fact, his short little book, it really doesn't contain too much prophecy. It's mostly about himself. But we can learn lessons from his life that maybe he didn't learn himself. So with that, let's start right off at chapter 1, verse 1. I'm going to read the first 3 verses and make some comments, and we'll get through verses 1 through 6 today. Now the word of the Lord came to Jonah, the son of Amittai, saying, Arise, go to Nineveh, that great city, and cry out against it, for their wickedness has come up before me. But Jonah arose to flee to Tarshish from the presence of the Lord. He went down to Joppa and found a ship going to Tarshish, and so he paid the fare and went down into it to go with them to Tarshish from the presence of the Lord. So we read, the word of the Lord came to Jonah, and what was his response? He tries to flee the presence of the Lord. Now, you and I both know that you really can't escape the presence of the Lord. He's everywhere. And really, no matter what direction you face, he's there in front of you. He's there on either side. He's there behind you. But with our heart attitude, with our, in a sense, we can turn so as to face away from him. Like our posturing, our attitude, our heart, instead of being in a position of relating to God face to face, we now present to him the back of our head or our backs in the way we respond to him. I'm a people watcher. I'm sure I'm not the only one who's gone and sat at a park bench on a nice day, sun's out, temperatures are nice, and you sit there and you watch people. And there were several times where I would be sitting in a park and I'd look over, and at a bench nearby there's a couple sitting together, a young man and a young woman, and things seem to be fine. They're relating to one another. But then at some point the young man says something, and you can tell that the young woman didn't like, because it's at that point, even though you're not hearing the dialogue, you can see her posturing changes. He says something, and all of a sudden she's got her arms crossed, and she turns her back to him, kind of like saying to him, I don't like what you're saying. I don't want to hear you anymore. I'm not listening anymore. The young man is frantic to try to take back his words, but the young woman's already taken that position. Sometimes our reaction to the Lord can be like that, especially when we get an impression, we feel like, he's asking us to do something we don't want to do, or we read something in the Word that is communicating to us that we need to change, and we're just not ready to do that. We got to be careful about that. Anyway, that must have been the case with Jonah. God brings him a word, tells him to do something, and he's making an attempt to flee. Let's keep reading. But the Lord sent out a great wind on the sea, and there was a mighty tempest. There was a big storm on the sea, so that the ship was about to be broken up. Then the mariners, the sailors, were afraid, and every man cried out to his God, and threw the cargo that was in the ship into the sea to lighten the load. But Jonah had gone down into the lowest parts of the ship. He had laid down, and he was fast asleep. In these verses, we read that every man cried out to his God. There's this huge storm. The ship's about to be broken up, and every man is crying out to his God. In my English Bible, that word God is spelled with a small g, a lowercase g. And it tells me in reading the story so far that at this point, no one was crying out to the real God. And they go a step further. They're not only crying out to their little gods, but they take all the cargo of the ship and they throw it overboard, it says, to lighten the load. You know, sometimes in our personal lives, we're in danger of sinking because of the weight of the cargo we carry. We have burdens. We're in a situation. And, you know, when this ship left port in perfect weather, it was absolutely seaworthy. It was sailing. Everything's fine in normal conditions. But then the storm came, and it wasn't storm-worthy. And the lesson for us is, you know, you may be seaworthy, but are you storm-worthy? Ask yourself that question. You know, when crisis happens, when challenges come your way, when things get difficult, do you find yourself still sailing? Or do you find yourself in danger of the ship falling apart? It's one thing to be seaworthy. It's a whole other thing to be storm-worthy. Last verse for today. So the captain came to him and said to him, "What do you mean, sleeper?" Remember, he was sleeping in the bottom of the ship. And the captain says, "Arise, get up, and call on your God. Perhaps your God will consider us so that we may not perish." Now, in this particular verse in my Bible, God is spelled with a big G, uppercase G. Call on your big God. Perhaps your real God will consider us. Look, at this point in the story, Jonah's not praying. He's too busy trying to flee. He's trying to hide from God's presence. And we know we can't hide even when fleeing. And here, absolutely mind-boggling, an unbeliever is prompting him to turn back to his God, the real God, the one and only, the big God. We're going to leave off here. We'll start off tomorrow at verse 7, and we'll pick up the story and see how it goes. Until then, consider, are you storm-worthy? 2, how's your posturing with the Lord? In your heart, are you seeking him? Are you face-to-face? Or are you in a place presenting your back? God bless. See you tomorrow.